Sophia, look, I drew you and Mom's faces during our class today. I held out a piece of drawing paper to my adopted sister, who is 4 years younger than me. Sophia looked at me with trepidation and hesitated to receive it. So I took her hand and let her hold the drawing paper. Look, Sophia, don't you think I've drawn a lovely picture of you and your mom? When I smiled at her, a smile finally appeared on her face. What a sweet little sister. I'll always be on your side. I made a firm promise like that when I was in elementary school. My name is Luna Rogers. I'm 28 years old, single, and a workaholic. I'm my father's partner in business. I've heard that my family was once wealthy, but that no longer brought me any honor. However, the family had been affluent for a long time and had enough assets to last due to the success of the family's heads throughout several generations. I was carefully raised because I was my father's only daughter. I made and raised to be a rich girl with a very nasty personality. But there was one thing that was missing in order to be an arrogant and obnoxious girl. To be honest, I am not pretty at all. To themselves. I did not have enough height in my nose to make it appear taller. I believe complexes are necessary to avoid being an arrogant girl to some extent. My original mother died when I was 5, and a year later my father remarried because he was wealthy. It appeared that he needed a partner for public appearances. To be honest, it was a little complicated for me, even as a child. I was perplexed since it had only been a year since my mother passed away. Fact is that my biological mother didn't have much time for me. Even when I went to her room, I'm tired. And then she would kick me out of the room. I could sense the coldness in her eyes as she glanced at me with an uneasy expression on her face. So I was overjoyed that I was getting a new mother who was bringing her daughter with her. My new mother, Josephine, was still young and a single mother. Why would my father remarry a woman with a child? Why a single mother? I vaguely remember people around me being in an uproar. My father later told me that Josephine was a college classmate with whom he occasionally met at reunions. She didn't have a husband. They knew each other very well, and they decided to get together for the sake of their children. When I first saw Josephine, I noticed she was really gorgeous, and our kid was a lovely girl. Josephine was a kind person, and I was very happy to have an adopted sister. Being an only child, you have no one to play with when you go home. My father, who was always busy, was often away. So, when I found out that Sophia was going to be my sister, I was overjoyed. And Josephine was a very nice person. She showed me so much affection that I couldn't believe she was my stepmother. Not only was she kind, but she also raised me and Sophia strictly at times. Aside from Josephine, Sophia was a shy child. She did not take to me well, but after a year or so, she began to follow me around. Her manner and personality were endearing, and she was extremely attractive and stunning, much like Josephine. Everyone complimented her, remarking how beautiful she would be when she got older. It was funny how everyone would quickly shut up when they noticed my presence. I was already aware that I was an unpretty child at the time. I had a rough face like my father, so I was even more proud of Sophia's cuteness. One of my mean classmates said, "People are generally jealous when their adoptive sister is more attractive than them. You're acting all nice, but you really hate Sophia, don't you?" That's what she used to say. I just shrugged my shoulders. Josephine would say to me,
"Luna, you have your own charm that others don't have. And above all, you are strong and smart."
She told me so. I was truly grateful to Josephine for such support. In exchange for my good looks, God gave me a superb brain. I had already started studying economics in my second year of high school. I studied economics and business administration in college, of course, and started investing while I was there. After graduation, I became my father's right-hand man. Everyone expected me to take over the business after my father, and I intended to do so as well. As for Sophia, she went to an art college after graduating from a girls' school. After graduation, she joined a university laboratory and studied art. She would eventually get married and live happily ever after. That's what everyone thought. Everyone laughed at me when I told them that Sophia would have to marry a man who met my standards. "Luna, you are really obsessed with your sister." My best friend from elementary school would sigh or laugh at my words. I didn't care. I was going to make my pretty little sister happy with everything I had. I was resolved to do it without being told by anyone. Josephine and my father used to have a good laugh about this. Despite the fact that we were not blood relatives, the 4 of us managed to live happily together. However, Josephine passed away in the fall when I turned 27. She'd been looking a little down for a while, and I even asked her what was wrong. But she just laughed and said she was just tired. Then, one day, she was hit by a car while crossing a crosswalk on her way to the store. There was no particular incident, and it was Josephine's fault for crossing the street without noticing that the light had changed. According to a person who was watching the scene, she looked like she was pondering something. She didn't see the traffic light or the car. That's what I heard. Sophia was greatly depressed by this. Her mother, Josephine, was a wonderful person who always looked after us. She lavished so much love on us. Not only Sophia, but I loved her so much too. I wish she lived longer. That was what I truly thought. A week after Josephine's sudden death. Sophia came to my room after dinner. Luna, can I talk to you for a minute? I was just cleaning up my mom's room. Sophia spoke in a slightly worried tone. I asked her what was wrong. I found some letters. I don't even know the names on them. And there were pictures inside. Sophia handed me a couple of letters and 2 pictures. I looked at the photos and saw that one of them was a little boy. I assumed it was a commemorative photograph taken at a birthday party. He was standing there with a box of cake and a smile on his face. The other photo was a boy who looked like a middle school student. He looked like a grown-up version of the same boy I saw earlier. The letters were all short and similar in content. Lucas is doing well. But the most recent letter said, "We haven't received any results yet. We will let you know the cost." Those words were written. I had no idea what they meant. The sender's address was in an area that is quite a distance from here. I didn't even remember hearing the name of the town or anything. I looked at Sophia. She stared at me, worried. Who could this be? I wonder if they are my mom's relatives. I'd heard that Josephine had very few relatives. I don't know what to make of this. Did Josephine keep a diary or something? When I asked her, she said she kept a notepad on her tablet as a diary. But since it's her personal stuff, I thought I shouldn't read it. Sophia hadn't touched it. It was the right thing to do, but under such circumstances, we had no other option. I couldn't simply stand there with such mystery in front of me.
Can you bring me the tablet? I feel bad about it, but we have to see what's written there.
Fortunately, the tablet Sophia brought was unlocked. I looked through it quickly and found that it was really just a diary with things about daily life about Sophia and me. But there was one entry that caught my attention. I heard that the child is well. I'm relieved. I assumed Josephine was referring to me or Sophia when she said the child. However, when I reread it, there was no mention of us being sick or anything like that. Sophia and I looked at each other. Hey, do you think she was hiding something from us? Sophia said sadly. Her reaction was obvious. Sophia really loved her mother, and for Sophia's sake, I decided to look into the matter. I, for one, was not comfortable leaving this puzzle unresolved. Okay, leave it to me, I said, tapping my chest, and Sophia looked relieved. She apologized for taking my time. After Sophia left the room, I went back to read Josephine's diary again. Then there was a post from about a month ago. There was one word that caught my attention at the end of the usual memorandum-like sentence. Money. Thorny. I had a job, and it would be difficult for me to solve this puzzle by myself. So, I decided to leave this to the experts. In other words, I hired a detective. I asked a lawyer I knew in my business to introduce me to a good detective. I asked him to find out the address of the letter and the connection between the photo and Josephine. 2 weeks later, I got my answer. Josephine used to say that she didn't have many relatives, but her brother, Sophia's uncle, still lived in his birthplace. They used to be a wealthy family, and they had a lot of fields and so on. So Josephine was raised there, but she got pregnant right after she graduated from high school. Of course, her parents were furious. They demanded the name of her boyfriend, but Josephine never revealed his name. And even though she was kicked out of her house, she desperately worked part-time to give birth to the child. At the time, Josephine's family was still wealthy and powerful locally. So Josephine probably kept her mouth shut for fear of causing difficulties for her family. Her boyfriend died in an accident shortly after Josephine became pregnant. It was later discovered that his father worked for a corporation that was affiliated with Josephine's father's company. It was later discovered that his father worked for a corporation that was affiliated with Josephine's father's company. The children were twins, a boy and a girl. One was Sophia, the other Lucas. Although they had worked hard to get to this point, life was indeed a bit of a struggle. With twins in her arms, Josephine almost lost her way. But then her parents, who'd severed connections with her, told Josephine that they could take Lucas in. Josephine's brother had no boys, so they said they would adopt Lucas and make him their successor. In exchange, they said they would provide a reasonable amount of support. Josephine was troubled. It was as if she was selling out her child. However, the three of them could not continue to live that way. If Josephine gave Lucas up for adoption, he could live nicely as their successor, and Josephine would be able to raise Sophia properly. Josephine decided to hand Lucas over to her parents. Does that mean I have an older brother? Sophia read the detective's report and said with a surprised look on her face. I shrugged my shoulders and told her that it might be her older or younger brother. It must have been hard for Josephine. I can only imagine what it must have been like for a mother to give up her child. Even just thinking about it made my heart ache. But there was more to the report. Sophie's older brother or younger brother. Lucas was weak and was prone to illness, and he was frequently under the care of the hospital. Josephine's family had already lost a significant portion of their wealth when she married my father. It was because Josephine's brother failed to manage his assets. So they were running out of money for Lucas's treatment and so on. They started asking Josephine for money. It's all your fault. You forced us to take care of a weak child like him. They said horrible things to Josephine. Josephine managed to raise the funds for her son and send it to them. But about a month before Josephine passed away, Lucas collapsed. He had a major heart attack. So are you saying that Mom was worried about how to raise money for Lucas's hospitalization and treatment? When Sophia questioned, I told her that it could have been like that, and then I sighed and spoke slowly. Josephine was a housewife, and she didn't have that much money at her disposal. She must have spent a lot of time considering what to do, slept poorly, and struggled to concentrate. I was sure that was when she had an accident. A ring for her son, who she had given away for her life. She must have thought of every way to get the money. Josephine's kindness led to the tragedy. Why didn't she tell us about it? Aren't we a family? It was the only thing for which I could not forgive Josephine. If she had spoken to us, my father and I could have intervened. Why didn't she trust us? I thought about it while watching Sophia's sad face. I had no idea why Josephine hesitated to ask for help. Then I remembered something. Just around that time, Josephine appeared to be trying to tell us something. Several times she tried to talk to us but kept her mouth shut. However, my father and I were having some business issues and were racing around everywhere. What's up, Mom? What? It's again? I'll be right there. I'll handle it. Something like this happened a few times. You look very busy at work, Josephine said. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you trying to tell me? Are you worried about something? No, it's okay. Just don't push yourself too hard. Oh yeah. Thank you, Mom. I'm fine. It's nothing. At least, I'm physically strong. Okay. I'm glad you are okay. Josephine was attempting to find the proper moment to not interrupt with my job, but she became fatigued and had an accident. So does that mean my father and I were responsible for Josephine's accident? Was it because of our work? If only I had paid more attention to Josephine at that time. When he thought of that, I was so frustrated and angry with myself. I almost burst into tears. I clenched my teeth and held back the tears. Sophia undoubtedly saw right through my mind. After a moment of silence, Mom was a kind person, Sophia said to me as if she cared for me. Yes, she was. I said sincerely. Hey, and about Lucas? I smiled at Sophia. Of course. I'll take care of it. I can't possibly decline anything you and your mother asked me to do. She raised me like I was her own daughter. I'll do whatever it takes to grant her wish. I spoke with my father and decided not only to send money to Josephine's family, but also to take Lucas in for Sophia's sake. Of course. I met Lucas, told him the whole story, and got his consent. Lucas knew that he was adopted. However, he didn't know that his mother was alive or that he had a sister.
I wish I could have met my mother while she was still alive. I wanted to thank her. But I am so grateful to have met my sister and to have met you. I have tried this.
He closed his eyes as if in prayer for Josephine's soul. The gentle expression on her face, much like Josephine's, brought tears to my eyes, and I realized that they were really related. On the other hand, I'm sorry to tell you that Josephine's brother was pleased to let go of Lucas. I could see from his expression that he was relieved to be free of the sick person who needed a lot of money. Lucas has now been transferred to a university hospital near our house. He's now undergoing treatment. It seems that Lucas was older than Sophia. So now, Sophia has an older brother. She is crazy about him. She goes to visit him at the hospital every day. I have mixed feelings about it, to tell the truth. I guess I can't help but be jealous. But after all, Sophia is Josephine's daughter. It's no wonder she's so nice to Lucas. That's why I love her so much. By the way, Lucas is a very intelligent man. He told me with a small smile that he had crammed a lot of knowledge into his head because he was often in a hospital bed. My father and I looked at each other and came up with an idea. We believed that he'd be able to assist our company once he recovered. I can only feel sorry for Josephine's brother, who was unaware of this amazing man. On the first anniversary of Josephine's death, Sophia and Lucas visited her grave. My father and I also offered a prayer for her. Hey, Josephine, you don't have to worry anymore. We'll be fine. I'll make Sophia and Lucas happy. You showed me a lot of love. I hope I was able to repay you in some way. I can believe that we can be a real family, even if we're not blood related. Thank you for raising me like that. Josephine. I felt as if Josephine was smiling at me from above. I don't have a father. There's never been a father in my memory. So not having a father was normal for me, and I took it for granted. My mother's life was not simple. She was a single mother who gave birth to me at a young age. And since I was always sick, we always had financial problems. As a child, I was hospitalized many times. Each time I was hospitalized, my mother would pat me on the head and say, "Don't worry about it." At that, she would smile kindly at me. I adored her smile and how she patted me so much that just looking at them made me forget about my physical discomfort. She was caring and kind, and I loved her. Of course, money is not everything, but I wanted to help my mother when I grew up. As a child, I always hoped that one day I would be able to repay my mother for her generosity. Perhaps my body responded to my wish, and as I grew older, I stopped returning to the hospital. Gradually, I began to have my own dreams. I wanted it to be a doctor. Perhaps my past experiences had made me think that way. I wanted to help children who were suffering like me and more than me. That's what I began to desire. But to become a doctor, you have to go to medical school. And medical school is expensive. I was worried my family's financial position would not improve no matter how strong my body developed. If I went to medical school, I would be putting a great load on my mother once more. My mother had always supported me. Therefore, I hesitated to tell my mother about my selfish dream. But seeing me like that, "What's wrong? If you have a problem, tell me about it," she asked me. I told my mother about my dream. She didn't hesitate at all. "You are free to do whatever you want to do," she said so with a kind and warm smile. I was so happy that I hugged her and cried. And I promised myself in my heart that I would become a doctor and compensate my mother for all she had done to me. From then on, I stopped doing whatever my classmates did and focused solely on my schoolwork. I was determined to pass medical school and become a doctor. I kept the pen in my hand to attain the same, and I was able to realize my ambition by passing the entrance exam for medical school at my desired university. But things were only going well up to this point. My mother grew ill as a result of all the hard work she had to undertake up to that time. Fortunately, she was not hospitalized, but she had to take a lot of time off work and her income decreased. I was able to toss money that I made from my part-time job at home, but it wasn't enough for us to live a regular life. I had no way to pay for next year's tuition with that money alone. I didn't want to give up on my dream, but I could not continue to stay at the university if I did not have the means to pay the tuition fees. I looked for a way to stay at the university, and when I discovered a couple of options to stay at university, I received a significant sum of money in my account, $2,100 plus next year's tuition. I was more horrified than surprised by the suddenness of the transfer, so I discussed the matter with my mother. Then my mother gave me a thoughtful look. "I'll do some research, so don't touch the money." She told me that. A few days later, my mother told me about the money. She told me that she had found out where the money came from, and she assured me that it was safe money and that I need not to be concerned. "Where did this money come from?" I was concerned and asked her, but she laughed, somewhat troubled, and said, "Don't worry about it. Please feel free to use it. And from now on, $2,100 will be transferred to your account every month." She said so. I was astonished by the tuition amount alone, but the thought of $2,100 being transferred to my account every month from now on was unbelievable. But I opted to trust what my mother stated. However, I was left with a nagging feeling in my heart. However, considering the current situation of my family, I had no choice but to rely on this money. I believed my mother's words and used the money for tuition and living expenses. From then on, I continued to receive annual transfers of school fees, as well as the monthly payment of $2,100 as promised. My mother refused to tell me where the money came from, no matter how many times I asked. I never found out where the money came from, but I did pass the exam and become a doctor. Now I was able to repay my mother for all she had done for me. I could give her a more comfortable life when I became a doctor. I told my mother first about it. She was very happy, but she had a sad smile on her face, which bothered me a lot. What's wrong? Mom, no, it's nothing. Nothing.
No, it's nothing.
No matter how many times I asked, my mother would just give me that answer and would not tell me anything else. And one day, after a few days of not knowing how she felt, a luxury car pulled up and a well-dressed couple got out of the car. "Can I help you?" I said to the two people I did not recognize, and the woman suddenly hugged me. "Hey, what's your problem? Please let me go." Without understanding why, I tried to pull her away, but the woman, on the contrary, strengthened her hold on me, and the man standing next to her nodded as he watched us. I didn't know what was going on. I got scared and asked my mother for help. "Mom."
Yes.
All of my words and all of my gaze were directed at my mother. Nonetheless, I heard the response from someone who was hugging me. "What are you talking about? Let me go."
Oh, why? It's been a long time since we last saw each other.
"It's been a long time. Just let go of me."
Oh, are you perhaps nervous?
Oh, Auntie am sure she is. It's been a while.
I really didn't understand what was going on. The woman, and then the man next to her, said things that I didn't understand. I looked at my mother again, but she looked away from me and turned her head down. "Mom,
What is it?
the woman answered again in my ear.
I am your mother.
"What?" The woman then let me go and looked at me with the man.
You accusing the body rumors. You're a child.
I don't understand what you are talking about.
Oh, you're a surprisingly dull child. He's literally saying the truth. We are your parents.
What do you mean? I can understand. It was impossible to understand everything they said. But the two people who identified themselves as my parents were looking at me with smiles on their faces as if it were natural. I fearfully looked at my mother once more.
They're telling the truth.
My mother nodded, looking away from me. My mother would never tell such a bad lie. Knowing this well, I believed her words, and at the same time, I despaired. "I'm not your daughter."
I'm sorry.
I turned away from my mother, who apologized, and now turned to the couple. The couple seemed to realize what was going on.
You really our daughter. It's no wonder you don't recognize us. You were given to her as soon as you were born.
My mind was in a panic, but the conversation went on, ignoring me. According to the couple, their family had been a family of doctors for generations. It was a given that you would become a doctor because you were born into their family and had no other option. I was born into such a family, but for some reason, I was sent to my current mother. And my mother was not officially my mother, but a distant relative of the couple.
I left you in her care before you could even remember. No wonder you don't remember any of that.
For as long as I could remember, I never had a father. I always lived alone with my mother, and I thought she was the only family I had. But I guess I was wrong. My mother was never married from the beginning. She'd never given birth to a child. And why was I sent to her?
Oh, that's simple. But you fell sick easily. Abracadabra's man. Label says.
Being a doctor is a difficult job.
But you were born too frail to be a doctor. You see, we were wrong. You grew up to be such a fine doctor.
I didn't understand what they were saying at all. I kept repeating their words over and over in my head, and then I finally squeezed the words out. "So you are here to pick me up because I'm a doctor now?"
See, you have a brother. I am embarrassed to tell you this, but he never became a doctor. Not only did he not pass medical school, he failed every exam after that. We realized that he'd never become a doctor. But then we heard about you.
We realized that he'd never become a doctor, but then we heard about you.
I had a bad premonition. No, it wasn't a premonition.
We think you can be a doctor.
But we heard you were studying to be a doctor, had graduated from medical school, and were doing well.
Then we thought it was better to have high hopes for you than for a kid who wasn't as good as you.
When they told me that much, I finally realized what was going on. That money was transferred when my mother collapsed, and I needed to pay my tuition fees. That money must have been transferred by the two of them. They said high hopes, but this was not the case. It was just an investment of the money they had been putting into their incapable kid, which they decided to put into me instead. And my mother knew this. That's why she assured me that the money was secure.
Now, do you understand why we are here?
Yes, I do. I understand very well.
Okay, then you'll be living with us from now on.
This couple comes from a family of doctors. As a future doctor, this was probably the ideal environment for me in a sense. I would be able to gain knowledge, abilities, and experience that no one else could. But
Here, go pack your bags.
I'm not leaving here.
What do you mean?
I mean it. I will not go with you two.
What are you saying?
The couple looked at me in awe at my words. It was obvious. Because these two people abandoned me, their daughter, in the care of a distant relative because they feared I would never become a doctor. And they did not even contact me once, let alone meet me. And then, as soon as they discovered that the child they were expecting was not suited for a doctor, they came to retrieve me, whom they had placed in the hands of a relative so long ago. They may be good doctors and probably very smart. But there was something wrong with these two. They were incorrect as people. And above all, if you are really my birth parents, my real parents, then you abandoned me. And it was my mother who raised me. My mother was always there for me while I was in the hospital, when I was alone and lonely. She was there for me when I needed her. She was the one who inspired me. She was the one who encouraged me to pursue my goals. I am grateful to you two for giving birth to me, but I have only one mother. She is my only family, so I won't go with you guys. I clearly looked them both in the eye and told them. Then they both simply left the place. They were the type of people who would abandon their child merely because she couldn't become a doctor. So I assumed that if I didn't do what they said, they wouldn't need me either, and I think they didn't care about me. After they left, my mother apologized to me. I hugged her. Mom, thank you for raising me all these years. From now on, it's my turn to repay you. So please continue to be my family.